Patreon.com/the Walk Off Podcast. $4 a month gets you in there.
If you're watching this right now and you haven't hit the like button, Billy, get on it. Bug your brother. Tell him to do the same.
Good morning and welcome to the Walk Off, everyone. Today's episode is brought to you by Left Field Brewing. You can go to their online shop, leftfieldbrewery.ca, and when you spend $55 on your beer, you get a free koozie on us. It is Walk Off, the code you're going to use to do that. If you are buying beer, I highly recommend Left Field's new easy drinking lager, ice cold beer or ice cold beer lime. This is beer you drink in the middle of the afternoon during the ball game, the best kind of beer. All right, we are very excited to have returning to the show, Blue Jays insider and reporter for MLB.com, Julia Kreuz. Welcome back to the Walk Off. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Happy to be here, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
How was your off season? Did you wind up getting home at all?
It was, it was eventful for sure. I did go home, did go back to Brazil for a little bit, which was great. I got to spend New Year's with the family, which is something I hadn't done in a while. It was really, really fun. And it was also a nice change of environment. You know, it was cold and gloomy when I left here. I got to spend 3 weeks in the sun, which was pretty incredible. But you know, there's always time to come back. And when I did, I was like, okay, now I'm ready for baseball.
Yeah, right. So December, January weather, it's different from Toronto to Brazil. There we go.
Sure is. It's a nice little life hack, you know. As soon as it starts getting cold here, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go home now.
What is your scale of family before you need out? Are you like all the family you can get all the time and you're good? Is it like a week, 2 weeks? Where is your barometer on enough is enough?
That's a very good question, and I think it varies. If they come to me, I think 2 weeks is the cap because this is my space, you know? And I don't know if you know much about Brazilians, but we tend to be chaotic. So when they're here, I'm like, okay, 2 weeks is probably the cap. But if I go down there, it is so nice to just be around them and not have to cook and clean. I think that my tolerance is a little bit higher.
You get more patient with that? Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you back and back covering baseball. Let's jump right in with the insanity that was yesterday's game. Obviously a rough start from Yusei Kikuchi. And really, it's the first time he's been roughed up this season after a spring training that made him look like an all-star and, you know, a really good first game of the year. And I know in November you joined us and you predicted that Yusei Kikuchi would be a contributing member to the successes of this 2023 Blue Jays team. Where are you at on Kikuchi right now? Was this start concerning in any way, or can we get away with chalking it up to a blip on the radar?
Yeah, it was funny because I watched that game very closely yesterday, and it seemed as if to start, let's not forget that this Angels lineup this year is extremely potent. It's a very, very good lineup, and they can do a lot of different things. And it seems like he was, you know, overall in control. And then there was that blip, Dalton Varsho issue with the Sun, that it was first inning, right? And things sort of derailed from there. And that to me speaks to focus levels, right? So he surrenders a home run, I believe the very next at bat. It was an unfortunate sequence of events in which there were two out. He was supposed to be out of that inning, and then things just escalated in a way that made me think, and obviously, you know, I didn't ask him, I wasn't there, but it seemed to me like it was a focus issue there in which something happened that took him out of the mentality of the game and things started to escalate. So that's something that might be worth, you know, keeping an eye out as we go into the narrative that is Yusei Kikuchi throughout the year. Can he keep the mentality in the right spot? It seems like he can. He proved it in spring training, and he certainly proved it in his first start of the year, when the Blue Jays really needed a stabilizing presence in that starting rotation, because that first week was tough, right? Pitching wise. So this is just one start. And it will be fascinating to see how he bounces back. Will he be the Yusei Kikuchi that the Mariners saw at times, the guy that made an all-star team, or will he be what we saw last year in terms of consistency? This is something that's still very much ongoing, I believe.
With the mental focus aspect of Kikuchi, is it the best case scenario that that's what's wrong? Probably, right?
Yes.
Or has his focus been the whole problem the whole time?
Yeah, that's definitely not the case, right? But we know that he has the stuff. We know that when he's on and when he's, hitting his fastball locations and actually getting that ball to move and to miss bats, he is one of the best left-handers in the game. But then something happens that just isn't that. And so what is it? Is it just the mentality? Is it the grip? Is it the conditions? Is it game calling, right? We really can't pinpoint it. And there's so much that goes into a starting pitcher's work that it is really hard to, especially this early in the season, to try to predict how it's going to go. But that was maybe, my first impression of that whole first inning and how it unfolded, and then how the rest of the game went. But props to him for also staying in and giving the Blue Jays some innings there, because we know that the bullpen has already been sort of taxing, especially after extra innings and everything that happened in last night's game. That was a crazy game, wasn't it?
Wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Just insane. I am so curious, Julia, on your thoughts on how Yusei Kikuchi's usage of his fastball has decreased. And I asked because when they first brought Yusei Kikuchi in on the big 3-year deal and they were showing all the highlights, the thing that was so exciting to me as a fan was his fastball and how well that worked from the left-hand side. And in my mind, I was like, if this guy can just believe in his fastball and even increase the usage, this is good stuff. But it has worked the other way this season, in that we've seen his usage in the fastball come way down, and see him have some success with that.
Right on. And that's sort of a trend. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Jump in. Yeah.
No, I think that's a league-wide trend, right? I believe Sportsnet showed the numbers yesterday during the broadcast about how league-wide fastball usage has decreased. And that is very much, I believe, a product of just the modernizing of the game, right? Hitters are being taught from a young age now to go for the Nike swoosh swing, right? We all know that. And so how are pitchers countering that? How are pitchers finding ways to still miss those bats? And that is turning to the breaking ball more often and trying to fool hitters there. Is that going to last forever? I don't believe so. But when you look at what Kikuchi did last year and his struggles with locating that fastball and throwing that fastball for strikes, it makes sense that he would try something new here. And this is the time to do it, right? This is the time for the Blue Jays pitching staff or for the Blue Jays pitching coaches to try out new stuff with Kikuchi. And as long as he remains open to it, I think that they'll be okay. And again, he's shown that he can do it. It will be very hard for me not to be in on Yusei Kikuchi. Like, it would take a lot for me to be like, well, you know what? Yes, the Blue Jays tried, but that's it. I'm a Kikuchi supporter all the way.
Well, if we see success out of him, Julia, I want to see you really rubbing it in everyone's face. All right?
No.
You get an ego.
I'm going to take the high road. I'm just going to go like this. I'm just gonna be like, it's okay. You know what? People make mistakes.
Even better.
Okay. Matt Chapman's agent obviously doing backflips at this point in the season. I mean, my goodness, he's just fist pumping Tiger Woods in it right all over the place. In his walk year, started about as hot as any Blue Jay in this lineup, right? He's already got 19 hits. I think he's at 1 win above replacement already at the 10-game mark of the season. At 29 years old, 7 seasons into his big league career, can you see there being a career year in Matt Chapman's 2023 season?
That was the only thing I could think about during yesterday's game, to be honest with you. It's really telling the way that he's playing right now. He is on a mission, right? We know that numbers are not sustainable. We know that things tend to even out. But the fact is that his defense is what it's always been, what it's always going to be. He is one of the best third basemen in the game. And offense-wise, he has proven that he can do it. I don't know if that is still the case, but, until last night, he was tied for the lead in league RBIs. That is really telling. This guy wants it. And obviously, if you ask him about contract stuff, he's going to say that he's not thinking about that. And he probably isn't. But, obviously in the back of your mind, that's looming large. It is. It's a thing. And with Manny Machado having signed the extension that he did, Matt Chapman is poised for a big contract. Right now, he's only helping his case. And it's interesting how that tends to happen in baseball, right?
Right.
Walk years are usually when guys who, have that star quality shine a little bit brighter, because that's just, in the back of your mind, you understand that this is in your best interest as well as in your team's best interest. So it's been really fascinating to watch. And I wonder how far it will go. When are things actually going to start evening out? Because right now, the high seems extremely high, and it seems like it's never going to come down.
I know. It's like, how good can he be? Keeps going through my head. Because honestly, it doesn't feel fluke, right? And that's the big thing with what we're seeing out of Matt Chapman, is that it doesn't look like he's getting these little bloop singles with eyes on the balls, right? Like, this is the guy who's literally making hard contact on everything that he's swinging at. His defense is pairing up and matching with his offense perfectly. How much can Matt Chapman make next year? That's got to be what he's asking too.
I wouldn't even, I don't know if he would get Manny Machado money here, but that's not out of the question, especially when you look at the free agent market for
he will
third
be the number
baseman.
one available third baseman.
It'll be an interesting one. But let's not forget that Chapman has shown last year that he can be streaky, right? It is a thing that we've seen from Matt Chapman, and we've also seen some free swings. Even yesterday, he had a strikeout, or actually he didn't strike out, but I did notice a couple of swings where I was like, okay, but
he'll still reach.
for sure. But the thing is that we have seen also that side of Chapman. If he can hit for average, but stick with the power that he has right now, add the defense to that, he's going to command a very large deal in the offseason.
So
Especially
I
when
want
you
to
think.
I want to jump
ahead,
in
Adam.
here.
Sorry, buddy.
We have a question from the audience here. So this one comes from Jody. Says, it feels like Matt Chapman is just gone this offseason. It feels like the Marcus Semien season all over again. Is this a foregone conclusion?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think that the Blue Jays, and this is, the most sincere answer that I can give you is I don't know, because there's a lot that the Blue Jays need to consider here. They want to sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to an extension. Alek Manoah is not far behind. The Bo Bichette deal is quite a large one. So there is some budgetary things that the Blue Jays certainly need to consider. They also need to consider that they have a guy in the minors right now who is almost ready to come up in Addison Barger, who can very well fill that need for them in the coming years. Addison Barger is going to be a very, very good ball player. Can he stick at third base? We don't know. There are still some questions about that. Is he a third baseman? Is he a shortstop? Again, Bichette seems pretty set over there. Can he slide in at second? There are some unanswered questions about Barger, but if
can we have 4 second basemen?
How many second basemen is too many? But there's also that piece to consider, right? So these are the two things that come to mind for me when we're talking about Matt Chapman and what will become of Matt Chapman after the offseason. Number one, how is the Blue Jays financial situation? Do they have the flexibility to sign that type of a deal with a guy like Chapman in the offseason? And two, what does that mean for Addison Barger, who has proven this spring training that he is knocking on the door. He is almost ready to take that next step and maybe join this core of homegrown players that the Blue Jays have been able to bring up and have success with so far.
Well, here's another question then that ties in to Addison Barger. Off to a hot start in Buffalo, hitting .320 to start the season through 7 games. So Duncan says, Addison Barger, he's off to a hot start in Buffalo. Is there any way he can force his way onto this team a la Alek Manoah in his rookie season? Or is he going to just have to sit and wait for an infielder to experience some bad tacos to open up an opportunity for him?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think that the Manoah situation was unique in different ways. Number one, the Blue Jays rotation in the year when Alek Manoah debuted gave them the flexibility to bring a guy up like that. And
that's such a nice way of putting it.
You know what? I'm trying to be nice. It's Monday, you know. I'll save the spice for Friday, if you will. So he was on a tear. He came up because there was space for that. And also, that whole season was kind of experimental for the Blue Jays. This year, the Blue Jays are dead set on winning, right? On winning the division so that they don't have to take on a wild card opponent. And every game matters for that. So there will be fewer chances just for that reason. And when you look at the lineup, that lineup's pretty set, and it's doing what it's set out to do. The Blue Jays are hitting. So in that sense, it's hard for me to see a position player forcing his way in because he's, on a tear in AAA. I would imagine that, if Jose Barrios continues to struggle, for example, or if Kikuchi has some bad bounces, if someone in that starting rotation, or say the Blue Jays want to try a 6-man rotation for a little bit, I would think it would be easier for a guy like Ricky Tiedemann to force his way in than it would be for Addison Barger. I do think that the primary opportunities, even if Tiedemann wants to, or if they want to put Tiedemann in the pen for a little bit, right, to see if he can contribute from there, that to me seems more feasible than that happening for a position player, which is unfortunate because I think it would be super exciting to see a guy like Barger sort of learn the ropes, especially from a Matt Chapman, let's say. And maybe that happens in September, right? We can't really know. I can see that happening in September.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, I would say that there's a lot that needs to go either right or wrong, depending on how you look at it, for Addison Barger to make the majors.
It's such a good point. And it's funny because you're so right that it's too bad for Barger that there isn't that opportunity available. But I think as Blue Jays fans, we should remind ourselves that this is a good thing. Like, this is really good that the Blue Jays are at a point in their contention window where we're not able to just slip in Addison Barger and be like, development.
We have 3 infielders who could get MVP votes this season. And then at the other position, we have 3 guys fighting for who could all probably get all-star votes if they were playing regular at-bats. That's a deep infield.
It is a very, very deep infield. And to be honest with you, it also speaks to the depth of the farm system, which I know has been sort of a point of contention since, the big names came up. Where does that depth kind of fall? Where does the Blue Jays minor league system fall? But the fact that you have a couple of guys that are ready, for all intents and purposes, they're ready, and they're still in AAA, or they're still in the minors because the major league team is so loaded. That also bodes well for the Blue Jays. If not for simply, for the future is bright type thing, definitely at the trade deadline, having guys like that is extremely valuable for what the Blue Jays are trying to achieve here. And from what we've seen from the bullpen, I know it's a small sample size, but the Blue Jays are probably going to have to go out there and get another reliever at the trade deadline. And so having those trade chips is also very important, or potential trade chips. is also very important for a team like the Blue Jays right now.
So let's get into the bullpen. Trevor Richards had another rough outing yesterday. He continues to struggle. Nate Pearson in Buffalo was averaging 98.9 miles an hour on his fastball and was topping out at 100. How much rope does Trevor Richards get? I've got to think that it's getting shorter and shorter by the outing. A week, a month. His spot isn't safe with some of the guys in AAA pushing up, right?
Yeah, I was a little surprised to see him pitch the 10th, right? I'm not mistaken here. I was a bit surprised by that. And then, Tim Mesa comes in, and I
just really testing Blue Jays fans' resolve here.
Listen, I'm not gonna lie, I was producing yesterday's game for MLB.com, and walk-offs are extremely challenging work-wise. And I was just on the edge of my seat, fingers crossed, like cold sweats, being like, oh my God. Tim Mesa comes in. All I could say when I saw that ground out, all I could say was Timmy Mesa.
Yeah.
And that was it. And, there's certainly still bright spots when you look at that pen. But Trevor Richards, I was surprised. I was surprised to see him pitch the 10th. And I am surprised to see him again struggle as he has. I think that the first time that we did this, which was just the three of us, I think we also kind of got into Trevor Richards and his struggles and what it was that he could do to sort of right the ship, which is a weird like full circle moment for us. Truly. But and something else that surprised me was that Pearson did not make the opening day roster. So the good news is that the Blue Jays have options. But I would imagine that if Trevor Richards does not show improvement, get that changeup to work again and full batters with that, and get his command in order, then opportunities for other guys are going to start to open up.
When Trevor Richards is a Ray and just dominating, it is going to be such a thorn in my side.
That's coming.
Okay. It's coming, yeah.
I just want to jump into a comment about Nate Pearson. So we have a question from Eric.
Perfect.
Who says, what statistical categories are most important for Nate Pearson to earn a spot with this team again? Because his Ks per 9 are way up, but so is his walks per 9.
Yeah, that's a fascinating question.
Would we rather see a Nate Pearson with fewer strikeouts, but also walking less batters, or like where's the trade-off for that?
Yeah, I think that's personally, that's always what I would pick. Is it's okay if you're not striking out as many guys as long as you keep the walks in order. I can't say that is the norm or that's how everyone should think or would think, but just the conservative side of me is like, you know what? Especially if you're coming out of the pen, you can't really walk guys. Those are usually, especially for the guy like Pearson with the upside, the Blue Jays want him to pitch in high leverage moments and moments that matter. And you can't walk guys in those moments. That is the difference between winning and losing a game. So that might be something for him to work on before he can make the majors. I will say that again, with his injury history and all the bad luck, honestly, that he experienced last year, it's not a huge red flag that his walk rate is up. I do think that there's a lot of rebuilding here, especially when it comes to his command, and that's fine. And maybe that's why he didn't make the roster for opening day. But when he's ready, I don't see him sticking in AAA for long. I do think that we are going to see Nate Pearson contribute in the majors this year.
It's funny because at AAA, he can walk the bases loaded and they can just say, well, we're just going to keep him out there and he can strike out the next 3 in a row, right? But in a game against the Astros or the Yankees, if he walks the bases loaded, he's probably not facing a 4th batter.
That's right. That's a fascinating point. And so how is he developing right now, right? What are the Blue Jays doing strategically to help him develop and to help him maybe build that confidence beyond walking the bases loaded. There's a lot that goes into developing a guy, especially a guy that has had as many injuries and has missed as much time as Pearson has.
The bad luck thing is such a good point with, I mean, the kid had mono last year and missed half. Like, it's just every time it seems like the kid's ready to make that jump, something happens. So fingers crossed for him. And it is exciting that we might actually see the fruit of his labor come and work out for this team. So I am curious, after 10 games on the road here, they started away from the Rogers Center, which is always frustrating, especially over the amount of time that they've been on the road. 10 games is a long time to be on the road. I'd love to hear your biggest takeaways from these 10 games, and finishing 6-4, no matter how it looked or felt. That's a win, right?
Especially with the teams that they were facing. I mean, the Cardinals are no joke. The Angels are no joke, though sometimes it looks different.
Asterisks.
Let's leave it at that. That was a very, very challenging road trip, and there are certainly areas to improve. I think that the bullpen, again, being one of the major ones, the starting rotation, you have to believe that they're going to find some consistency. They are too talented not to, but that's still very much, a point of concern coming into the home opener. How is Chris Bassett going to do? We have seen mixed versions of him. How is Manoah going to fare coming home again and pitching in this environment with the new outfield dimensions? This is a guy that, did get into some home run trouble last year. Same for Barrios, same for Kikuchi. We have some things that are going to jump out right away with the new configurations of Rogers Center and all of that. And that's mostly on the pitching side. That said, the Blue Jays are the team that the front office envisioned in the offseason. They are a much more flexible lineup, and defensively as well. They are more flexible. There are more things that different guys can do in order to help this team win. And that's really exciting. It really, really is. Seeing the power, but also the ability to get on base, the aggressiveness on the base paths. That was all on full display for these 10 games. Extremely challenging road trip. I'm sure that, everyone was ready to come home by the end of it. But I don't even believe that the 6-4 record really encompasses the potential that we saw from the Blue Jays here. Certainly still points that they need to fine tune. But when you look at, when everything is said and done, I would say that road trip is a success.
I know you touched on it here, but let's talk Rogers renovations here now that the team is coming back to Toronto today. I know that you were lucky enough to see the big unveiling with a bunch of the media here last week. Yeah. What were your big takeaways from just what the fan benefits will be from this renovation? But also, I know you touched on the outfield configuration. How is this going to change the way this team plays on the field?
Yeah, that's I think that's the big thing. It's funny because you go in right away, it doesn't seem that different. But then as we took the tour, as we saw, the how the walls are different now, and as you can sort of physically see, the outfield is not as long anymore, and it's not symmetrical. Like, how is that going to play out? I can only imagine for a player, and say for a player like George Springer, who has played at Rogers Center for a little bit now and who got used to the configurations the way that they were. It must be weird to come in and have that be different. We heard Kiermaier speak during spring training about how every outfielder as a unit would go out the day prior to home opener or at the home opener and really study the dimensions all together and talk about it as a unit. That is so important, because if you're going to play cohesive defense, that needs to be communicated. And when you look at Kiermaier, Varsho, Springer, these are guys that are still learning to play with each other. Yes, they had spring training. Yes, they had this road trip, but they've never played together at Rogers Center. So that influences how you move, how you cover for each other, how you charge at a fly ball or at a sharp liner. There are so many things that they are now going to have to figure out, that they were going to have to figure out anyway because they haven't played together before. But the new configurations certainly add a wrinkle to that. When it comes to fan experience, my number one thing when we were taking the tour, and I actually got to sit at the, you know, at the bleacher section that they have now, and just the new outfield seats and all of that. Number one thing was these bullpens are really, really close to the fans. And that is going to be really fun, maybe. It's gonna be fun for fans. It's definitely the case.
Maybe not so much for opposing bullpen members.
I honestly don't know how it's going to go when the Yankees come into town. Obviously, I have the utmost confidence that the Blue Jays fans are respectful and nothing bad is going to happen. But man, you know, it's hard to see them not at least like heckling a Yankees reliever as the pennant chase gets more intense. That adds a whole new layer to fan experience and just, you know, baseball experience altogether at Rogers Center. And then all the new spaces, I do believe that the Blue Jays did a good job of, you know, as they set out to do, to bring in different types of fans, to grow the game in this city and to diversify the ballpark. That's pretty cool, to be honest with you. And as the product on the field has improved over the years, it makes sense for the Blue Jays to go out there and, you know, sort of improve the product within the ballpark as well as on the field.
I am also very excited to see how this bullpen right in the outfield fans is going to play out, especially after watching that brush up between Anthony Rendon and the A's fan. It's like you forget these ball players are humans and that they're really close, and some of them are hotheads, right? So who knows how this plays out.
And listen, frustration mounts, right? I dare you to tell me that you've never been frustrated at work. You know, it happens. Sometimes you want to yell at people. That's okay. It's okay to admit it. And that's no different for ball players, right? I think you're right. We do forget sometimes that these are real people and that's their job. And it's going to be stressful at times. And that's going to come out somehow.
Yeah, it's going to add a whole other wrinkle to just the opponents dealing with stuff. I'm excited to see how it plays out. I did want to touch on something. Sorry. Adam,
before we move on, we have a question from Sharon. Just wants to know, how drastic are these new wall angles in the outfield? Because they don't look that dramatic on the mock-ups, but we keep hearing about, well, it's a good thing we have better defensive outfielders because we're going to see some odd bounces off this outfield wall. Is it as drastic as they're making it sound? Does it look more drastic in person?
It does not look more drastic in person, but I can understand that it will be a completely different experience for the players who are actually on the field. I think that we forget just how unpredictable a little baseball can be. And when you take away sort of what players are used to, and you add new angles and you add the possibility of different bounces, it's I can see how that would be a drastic experience for the players, even though it doesn't look it from the outside.
Like the old symmetrical walls, a line drive off the walls, basically bouncing straight back at you. Correct. Are we going to see any weird angles where a ball hits and now all of a sudden it's a triple because George Springer's chasing a ball with a mind of its own into the corner?
My bet is yes, we're going to see certainly more of that. Okay. And that is why sort of the communication between outfielders becomes more important and positioning becomes more important. And frankly, having better outfielders out there also becomes more important.
So before we move on, I would love to hear your thoughts on this new outfield defense so far.
What are your thoughts on the new outfield?
I love it. I honestly love it. I've been so impressed with Dalton Varsho. I really was a fan of Varsho when he was on the Diamondbacks, and he was a guy that, like, at the trade deadline, I'm like, him, like, that would be a great addition. I never actually thought that they would give up the sort of prospect capital that it would take to get him. So it was like really surprising when they did wind up giving up Moreno. But he has honestly exceeded all of my expectations. And I think it's mostly because of how good he is on the base path and with the bat. I knew how good he was in the outfield, but my goodness, he's a well-rounded player. And Kevin Kiermaier is now that the he was a Ray. Like, it was so hard to even imagine him in a Blue Jays uniform. But now that he's here, I love it.
Yeah.
Are you similar?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
certainly.
okay.
And I think that it was something that had to happen, especially with, I think that I am honestly getting tired of saying the words new rules, but it's but it is what it is.
It's a major
right?
change in the game. Yeah.
It is. And it's one that stimulates more offense, that puts more runs on the board. And so when you look at that, you need better defense. You need to counter the trend somehow, right? And it's no joke. We had a 12-11 game yesterday. It's clear that offense is up. How do you make sure that you're still winning games with the potent lineup that you have? Well, you get better fielders. So that was something that needed to happen for the Blue Jays to have success. Pair that with the renovations and the fact that things are looking different, and there will probably be more balls in play at Rogers Center that are going to go different ways than what we've seen. It really becomes paramount to have the best possible defensive unit out there.
So your buddy at MLB.com, the bearded wonder, Keegan Matheson, tweeted this out yesterday, and it really caught my eye because I didn't know that this was something that the Jays organization was doing. But number 3 prospect, Yosver Zulueta, had an excellent 2023 debut yesterday. 3 innings pitched, 0 earned runs, 1 hit, 1 walk, 6 Ks. And these 3 inning outings are by design, is what Keegan kind of mentioned. And it's so that if they need him in the bullpen, they can shorten him up. If they need him to start, they can lengthen him out. If they want him to be the long man, they can go that route. Do you see Yosver Zulueta contributing in any serious way on this 2023 team? And in your opinion, what do you think the most likely role for him on this team will be?
Yeah. Zulueta is, I think, one of the big question marks of the Blue Jays farm system. Again, I don't necessarily have a good answer for you. I would love for him to be a contributor. I think that he is such an electric arm, and what he's shown so far, and the fact that he's come back from a major injury that's sort of delayed his development, and he's still dominating and he's still making his way through. It's a nice success story for him. And he's just a tremendous pitcher, right?
It's an interesting fence they're riding here, eh? With the 3 inning thing, like, I don't even know what to think of it. I like the idea behind it.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's obviously a lot of studying and a lot of strategy that goes into something like that, and fascinating. I don't think I'd ever heard about it before in this sense. But if we see Zulueta in the majors this year, I would imagine it would be in sort of a long relief role, right? Which seems to be still the spot that is up for grabs with. Mitch White is obviously not available right now. We don't know how he's going to slide in when he is available. Will the Blue Jays go with the 6-man rotation, or will White be the long relief guy? Does Pearson have a shot at that role at some point? Zulueta is sort of on the outside looking in and sort of trying to make his way. I would imagine that if he does make it, that would be his role. But at the same time, again, you're talking about a team that is trying to win every single night. So how do you balance that with the fact that you have a guy that is pretty much ready to go, but doesn't have the reps and has never really been in this environment? It's a tough position, but it's also a good problem to have.
Yeah. Julia, have you heard anything on Mitch White's rehab or timeline at all?
I believe that they were, I'm not going to say anything wrong here because I did have that information, but off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
But we know that he was throwing in spring training. We know that he appeared in minor league games. So he is progressing. It's certainly not a long-term thing. We are going to see him soon enough. But I also think that I know that the Blue Jays are being extra careful with him because there's really no need to expedite a process for Mitch White right now. So we're going to see him soon. I'm not going to give you a timeline because I don't want to say anything wrong here.
Well, he
Better
is
safe than sorry.
Mitch White does not have options, right? So once he is done with
Mhm.
his rehab stint, however long the Jays wish to drag that out for and take their time with, someone's got to be removed from the 26-man roster. Is that just going to be a Nathan Lucas? Is that the easiest option, or is it going to be a bullpen guy who's maybe we're looking at Trevor Richards? We talked about him earlier. Is he just on the chopping block once Mitch White is unavoidably healthy?
That's a big question, isn't it?
And is that
That's
maybe
a big
why they're
question.
taking their time with him? Like,
I mean, I'm sure that certainly plays at least a factor in it, right? Of course,
Yeah.
you want a guy to be 100% before coming in. There is also a big decision roster-wise that you have to make, and so what do you do? It seems like Nathan Lucas would be the immediate answer, or maybe the sort of the automatic one, if you will. And I use air quotes here because I don't think that any decision like that will be taken lightly. But that's a big one. And do the Blue Jays have many candidates? That they're like, oh, okay, you get the boot. I don't necessarily think so. I don't think it's a clear-cut decision at all for when Mitch White is healthy and ready to go.
I do just want to also preface that Nathan Lucas is in AAA. I think Jordan Luplow replaced him when they added
That's
him.
right.
But let's just use those two names interchangeably as that 26th man. So for argument's sake and simplicity's sake, just for anybody in the comment section who's going to roast us for being idiots.
That 26th spot or that final bench spot is
because it
that
could be
going to
Nathan
be the
Lucas in
one?
a week by the time Mitch White is whatever. So anyways, just wanted to clarify because I know the people are going to be out there commenting.
Yeah, well, everything is fluid. We're
It's
good.
fluid. There you go.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a little bit of the one signing that maybe hasn't turned out quite the way Blue Jays fans were hoping is Brandon Belt to date. He has struggled out of the gate. Now, I know that there are some members of the fan base that are just like, he's washed up, it's over. Obviously, he just came off a major knee surgery. He's a veteran, 34 years old, so maybe he's just easing him way his
but
himself
this is the
back
best he's felt in years, Scott.
It's the best everyone's felt in years. Where are you at on Brandon Belt, Julia? Do you feel that in the long run he can contribute to this team?
Yeah, I'm not. I don't think that level of concern is justified. I think some level of concern is justified, and I think that there were always going to be question marks with Brandon Belt. Signing a 34-year-old who just came out of major surgery was always going to be a risk, but it's a risk that the Blue Jays took very knowingly. This is a guy that has won 2 World Series, the guy that can contribute in different ways when he is putting the ball in play at all, which is not happening right now. But
can you have a negative exit velo? Yeah,
exactly. I mean, he is willing to test that out. No, I'm kidding. But there were always going to be risks associated with Brandon Belt. The sample size is small. It is very, very early in the year. And he's always going to be a good guy to have on the bench. If a month from now we're still having a similar conversation, then maybe it's time to review a couple of points. But for right now, sure, you have every right to be concerned. And I think that with the way that he's been playing, that's very, very justified. But I think it's a little harsh even to chalk that up to, well, he's washed out,
Yeah.
he's done. That's it. Recovery takes time, but it plays in his factor that he's a veteran in that sense, because he's been around. He knows how to do it, right? So if the Blue Jays can still find ways to win, which they are and they will, as Belt figures it out, Belt is never going to be the number one option here. He's never going to be the guy that the Blue Jays turn to in the major moments or when they need that X factor. He is a bench player. He has a very specific role. And if the Blue Jays can get that out of him, then they're going to be happy. Very, very early in the season, I say give him a little bit more time.
I think the organization is benefiting too from the fact that it's not like they're struggling to find guys who can get at bats if Belt's not going. Like, as it is, there's kind of a limited number of ABs here. So, if he takes a little longer, it's not the end of the world.
And honestly, maybe that plays a factor too. And I think we saw that with Whit Merrifield last year, in which he wasn't getting regular at bats and he was coming off the bench for the Blue Jays when he was traded in. And that affected the way that he was playing, because it's just a new role that he had to adjust to. It's like, I'm used to playing every day and all of a sudden I'm not. And that requires me changing my preparation, changing my mentality, changing the physical side of things. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of that is also affecting Belt here. Coming in, adjusting to a new team, adjusting to a new role, seeing new pitchers, all of that can contribute to a guy having a slow start. So,
and that's another thing that I haven't heard a lot of people bring up, but that's a great point, Julia, about him switching leagues. Like, he is seeing guys that he has just never faced in the batter's box before.
Yes. And that's huge, right? We all know that is a big part of the sport, is that familiarity that is created between pitchers and hitters, and trying to one up each other with every at bat. So Belt is very much at the early stages of building that with a team like the Blue Jays, and even seeing the Kansas City Royals and seeing the Angels. It's going to take him some time to get acclimated to this, just his new surroundings and the pitchers that he's seeing in the batter's box, for sure. So, but again, being a veteran plays in his favor here, because that probably means that the adjustment is not going to take as long as it would for a young guy.
So all in all, if you're a Jays fan, you got to be happy with 6-4 after this road trip. But you look over at the division rival, the Tampa Bay Rays. And it's just like, what is happening in Tampa Bay? Julia, can you talk me off the ledge? They're not going 162-0, right? Please tell me they're not going 162-0.
Listen. Is there a chance? No, there isn't. They're not.
Where are you at on this AL East? If you were to just right now, 10 games into the season, guess how many teams in the AL East are going to make the playoffs? What's your prediction?
How do I how do I describe the puzzled look on my face for the podcast listeners, right? We all knew that it was going to be a tough division. We all knew that. I don't think anyone anticipated the Tampa Bay Rays putting together this start that they have. And
it's a historic start. Like,
yes,
in the wild card era, this has literally never happened. It's crazy.
And I can't say that I'm a Blue Jays fan, so I'm not really looking at it from that lens. which makes me curious about how you guys are experiencing this Rays start and just, the overall power of the American League East. I'm very curious to actually hear from you.
I'm terrified. I do this to myself every year, Julia, where I don't give the Rays enough credit, and then the season hits and I'm like, again, how did I do this to myself again? And as for the Yankees, I mean, they're just always scary. I know that right now they're reeling with pitching injuries, and
you can never count them out, eh?
You can never count them out. And yes, this fresh out of the box shortstop and Volpe they've got has maybe not hit expectations like Yankees fans were hoping, but I still think he's going to be excellent. I don't know. It's going to be a dogfight of a division.
Absolutely. Where are you guys at on the Orioles? Because they made things very interesting last September. Very interesting. Too close for the Blue Jays, I believe.
So personally, I think that the Orioles are going to be a thorn in everyone's craw come 2024. I don't think this is the year they take the big step forward everyone thinks they are. And I really am impressed with how they've built and developed this rebuild they're going through. And I think Adley Rutschman is a stud and probably arguably already the best catcher in baseball. I think Gunnar Henderson's going to be incredible, but relying on a 24 and a 21-year-old to carry your team and have no bumps in the road, it's a tall ask.
Yeah.
So I think the Orioles don't even win as many games as last year, but I don't think it's going to, development's not linear. I think this is going to be a huge year for them that way, but I just don't believe in their starting pitching, and I don't believe a 21 and a 24-year-old can carry a team.
Right on. I do have one more question for you, and I know that I'm flipping the script a little bit here, but
I love it.
As we come into the home opener and having seen this 6-4 road trip to start the year, percentage wise, where would you put the Blue Jays' chances of making the World Series? So let's go like on a way too early odds of Blue Jays making the World Series.
Adam, go first.
Okay, I will stall and I will buy time. Well, I guess, what is it now? 6 teams make the playoffs? So what's that? If all teams, I feel like the chances of the Blue Jays. Oh,
you're doing actual math? I love it.
I feel like the Blue Jays are, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but barring like catastrophe, should make the playoffs. So I'm going to just pencil that in as, if they don't make the playoffs, they can't make the World Series, right? So let's just operate under that assumption. If there's 6 teams that make the playoffs, that's like a 17.5% chance of making the World Series if all things are being equal, but Astros are probably taking a percentage of that off of us. The Yankees maybe taking a percentage off. Could I say 15% chance they make the World Series?
All right.
Wow, you're bullish. That is not Vegas odds, my friend. I was gonna say like 7%. I think they are a playoff team. I really do. I am trying to temper my expectations, Julia, because it hurts so much more when I raise my expectations. But I am excited about this team. Honestly, I look at this team. I love what they did in the offseason for balancing the lineup. I really am excited about the defense around the diamond. Yes, there's a question mark at shortstop, but also despite Bo's inefficiencies defensively, he might be the best offensive shortstop in the game right now. Maybe I'll up it to 10%. Where are you at as a non-fan and having tempered expectations where you're not being ridiculous like Adam and I?
I would fall closer to you, I think, Scott. I would have said maybe 7 or 8, but I respect the heck out of Adam's prediction. I respect it.
Hey, I did some pretty good percentages on some weird fractions there on the fly. So, all right. I'm sure I'll get my math double checked in the comment sections, but there you go.
Julia, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We always have so much fun whenever you join us, and we can't wait to bug you and get you back on. Thank you so much, and all the best in the future. We'll talk soon.
Thank you very much, guys. Good luck to everyone. This is
All right.
going to be a great season.
Cheers.